Some of the biggest changes to the acquisitions updates in Evergreen 3.11 are at the line item level. We've seen this a little bit in both the selection list and the purchase order videos, but let's take a brief look at the line items themselves. I'm going to find some under the acquisitions general search. And so I can see right away that there are a few changes, that this interface does look a little different. Two of the things that are changed in this search interface that I really like are that there is now a column for item count. And so this tells you how many items are actually connected to the line item. So if you have 5 or 6 copies of a particular title, that is going to show up here. The other column that they've added is the purchase order ID. In the previous version of Evergreen, you could get the purchase order name, but of course, because names are not required when creating purchase orders, not every purchase order has a name. Every purchase order does automatically have an ID, and now you do have the ability to have that show up in your line item search interface so that you can actually connect it to the correct purchase order. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the links that are available here. You can see the catalog record for this item. You can also see the worksheet. You can go directly to the purchase order, to any patron requests, to any invoices, and to any selection lists. This is not necessarily new. This was available in 3.9 and earlier, but there are some differences, of course, once you get into any of these individual links. Now, we've looked at the purchase order and the selection list quite a bit, and as I said, invoices have not yet been updated. But let's go ahead and take a look at the worksheet because there are some differences there. So when we open up our line item worksheet, we see that the interface has been updated to sort of fit that angular style. We have a lot more information up here at the top. Let's compare that to the 3.9 version of the worksheet. You can see here we have just the bare bones information about the item itself, and then any of the information about the copies being purchased. Whereas in our new 3.11, we have a significant amount of information up here at the top related to the purchase order. So we can see the cost, we can see how much has been encumbered, we can see whether or not it's been received, when it was activated. All of this information is helpful. In the worksheet itself, we have a fairly similar setup to what we had in that 3.9 version. It's fairly straightforward and bare bones in terms of just the information that it includes, but having this record information up here at the top is really helpful, I think. What I'd like to do at this point is take a close look at the line item as it appears within the purchase order. This is very similar to how it also appears within the selection list, and compare that to the 3.9 version so you can see what some of the differences are. So if I take a look at the line item within the purchase order, I can see that in addition to what we've talked about in previous videos where all of the information has been sort of shifted to the left, I also have a few really nice little indicators that are new. For example, I have this indicator here to just under the author's name that indicates that the item was received. Let's compare that to the original version, where all I have in this particular case is all the way over here to the right. I have that it says received. It doesn't stand out particularly, so I do think that's a nice change. Additionally, I do have information underneath here about the number of copies. In this case, there's of course only one copy, but if there were multiple copies and those copies were in different statuses, I could get a lot of information here about that. Compared to the 3.9 version, where we really don't have any of that information immediately available at the line item level. I also have information about the selection list that this came from, and the provider is listed at the line item level. In 3.9 and earlier, I didn't have any of that information immediately available at the line item. Obviously, I could find the provider when I'm in the purchase order by coming up to the top where all the purchase order information is. But this allows me to see that information whether I'm at the purchase order level or the selection list level. Additionally, I've mentioned notes and alerts. Let's take a look at what those actually look like in practice. So I can open up my notes for this particular line item. I can create a note if I'd like. I can also come down here and I can see what notes are on here. We have two. One is for presumably the library staff. The second is for the vendor, and so I get this vendor public alert over here to the left. So this is what your notes look like. You do have the ability to delete them once they're in here, but not edit them. For the most part, the changes that we're looking at are primarily aesthetic. There's not a whole lot that is different about how these line items function. However, there's a lot more information that's readily available at the line item level.